Hi, it's Miss Dubas here, and welcome to Lesson 8 of the Climatic Hazards Unit. This lesson is all about reducing the effects of tropical storms. Please make sure that you've got a pen, a piece of paper, and a different colour to mark with, and that you're working somewhere quiet and free of distraction so that you're able to focus on the work that you need to do today and your learning. And whenever you are ready, we can get started. So this lesson is how can the effects of tropical storms be reduced? So how do we minimise the impact of tropical storms? People around the world live in areas at risk of tropical storms, so how is it we can support them in managing these natural hazards? So let's first consider this question. Can tropical storms be prevented or stopped? Is there any way that we can prevent a tropical storm from forming? I want you to think about the answer to that question. Is it yes or no? The answer is no. Therefore, we need to do all we can to reduce the effects of tropical storms. So if we can't prevent a tropical storm from occurring, what can we do to try and minimise the amount of damage and the impact that it may have on people and the environment? So we know that tropical storms have lots of effects. So social effects that affect people and their lives, economic effects which affect the wealth of the area, and also environmental effects that influence the ecology and the landscape of the area. So what can we do to make sure that tropical storms, if they're going to be occurring in areas at risk, that we try to minimise the amount of damage that can be caused? And there are 4 different ways that we can do this, and we're going to review those 4 ways in our lesson today. The 4 ways are monitoring, prediction, protection, and planning. And we're going to be finding out what each of those mean in the rest of this lesson. So let's begin with monitoring tropical storms. Monitoring means recording physical changes to help forecast when and where a natural hazard occurs. There are 2 main ways that we monitor for tropical storms, which we'll review in just a moment. But of course, if we know that there are clues that something might be about to change in the atmosphere and that tropical storms may form, it may give us time to prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. So let's consider the first way that tropical storms can be monitored, and this is via satellites in space. Now, satellites monitor cloud formation and patterns. They're looking for clues that something might be about to change in the atmosphere, and therefore tropical storms may be looking to form or intensify. One of the clues they look for is this. Rain clouds reaching 16 kilometres in altitude are an indication or a clue that a tropical storm may intensify. This allows us to give warning to people that may be in its path, just to let them know that it's time to prepare and get ready for a potential tropical storm. The other way in which satellites monitor tropical storms is through monitoring of precipitation or rainfall. So the Global Precipitation Measurement Satellite monitors rainfall between 65 degrees north and 65 degrees south of the equator every 3 hours. And the image you see on the screen is a visualization of what that satellite looks like. And this allows us to monitor and see if rain is becoming more intense or more powerful, and therefore perhaps gives us a clue that tropical storms may be forming or intensifying. And again, this allows us to give warning and preparation time to those who the tropical storm may go on to affect. The second way we can monitor tropical storms is using aircraft, a little bit like the Global Hawk aircraft from NASA that you see in the image. Now, this aircraft will actually fly through tropical storms at approximately 10,000 feet. And the purpose of that is to release sensors into the tropical storm which take measurements. These measurements include measurements for rainfall, for wind speed, and for air pressure. So data is collected about the tropical storm. This helps scientists to understand if the tropical storm may be intensifying, how powerful that tropical storm is, and also it allows us to collect data to help us understand a little bit more about tropical storms, how they form, and how they develop. And this obviously will help us with predicting tropical storms in the future and understanding a little bit more about them. So just to check that you've understood what we've done so far, I would like you to decide which of these statements you think is false. So is it option 1, satellites and aircraft are used to monitor tropical storms? Is it option 2, The Global Precipitation Measurement Satellite monitors rainfall between 65 degrees north and 65 degrees south of the equator every 3 hours? Is it option 3, monitoring means to create stronger buildings to withstand tropical storms? Or is it option 4, sensors collect rainfall, wind speed and air pressure data? So if you already know the option, that is brilliant. You can just allow the video to run. But if you would like to reread those options, you may want to pause the video and resume when you are ready. So let's find out what the correct answer is. So the false statement was option 3. Monitoring means to create stronger buildings to withstand tropical storms is not the definition of monitoring. Monitoring is actually what is written in pink at the bottom of the screen. To monitor means recording physical changes to help forecast when and where a natural hazard occurs. Did you get it correct? If you did, give yourself a big tick. So let's now consider how prediction or predicting tropical storms can take place. Prediction means attempts to forecast where and when a natural hazard will strike based on current knowledge. We use the word attempts because it is very difficult to predict accurately where any natural hazard will strike and what damage may be caused. So how can tropical storms be predicted? Well, the way in which we are able to do this is through computer modelling, and the computers use data collected from somewhere that we've already mentioned. So data collected from satellites and aircraft is used by supercomputers to predict the intensity and path of tropical storms. The intensity of a tropical storm is its strength, and the path of a tropical storm is the route that the tropical storm may take. And an example of an organisation that monitors and then predicts tropical storm behaviour is the National Hurricane Center in Florida, and that is the area that you see in the image on the screen. Now, the National Hurricane Center provide predictions of between 5 and 7 days, so they're able to warn people in advance as to where they think the tropical storm may track and what might happen to its intensity within a 5 to 7 day window. Now, the path of a tropical storm can be predicted within about 400 kilometres, and that has increased in accuracy over time. However, what we should be aware of is that not all tropical storms are accurately predicted, so we must be aware of that. However, these predictions are really useful to us. It allows us to consider how to prepare people effectively for a potential tropical storm event. It might also give us time to evacuate people from areas at risk. So although the predictions may not be completely accurate, without them we would struggle far more in reducing the effects of tropical storms. So this is really useful. Now, prediction of tropical storms is a fantastic tool, and it is actually far easier to predict this type of natural hazard in comparison to something like an earthquake. So it's a really useful tool in order to help to save lives and reduce the effects of a tropical storm event. So as mentioned, the predicted track or path of tropical storms can be created using tropical storm data. The map on the screen shows an example of the predicted path of Typhoon Haiyan in 2013. It also shows rainfall and wind predictions to predict changes in tropical storm intensity over time. Being able to read this map is a geographical skill. So the blue line shows the forecast track where we think the tropical storm may travel. The map was actually created at 11 p.m. on Thursday the 7th of November. And we know this because it talks about the current data, so current winds, for example. So we know when this forecast map was made. It then predicts changes to the storm through to Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. And we notice that the wind speeds, for example, are predicted to decrease over this time frame. The potential track area is a cone of uncertainty around the forecast track because the typhoon may not follow the prediction exactly, so it may not follow that blue line exactly. Notice how the cone widens as the days go on, and this means that the prediction is becoming less accurate into the future. So we're going to practice reading this forecast map, so I'd like you to complete the questions that you see on the screen. So number 1, which day was this forecast map created? Number 2, what was the predicted location of Typhoon Haiyan on Friday the 8th of November at 8 p.m? And number 3, what was predicted to happen to the wind speed by Sunday the 10th of November? Make sure that you use facts and figures from the forecast map in your answers. So for example, giving a specific wind speed so that you're able to make the direct link back to the forecast map. So I'd like you to pause the video at this point, complete the activity, and then resume the video when you are ready to mark your work. So let's mark your work. Make sure that you've got a different colour pen so that you're able to do this. If you've got it correct, give yourself a big tick, and if you need to make a correction, that's absolutely fine. So number 1, which day was this forecast map created? Thursday the 7th of November at 11 p.m, or the current location. Number 2, what was the predicted location of Typhoon Haiyan on Friday the 8th of November at 8 p.m? You could have written west of the Philippines, maybe south of Manila, west of Tacloban. Number 3, what was predicted to happen to the wind speed by Sunday the 10th of November? So it's expected to decrease, but what I have done in my answer is I've included some specific figures. So it's to decrease from between 305 and 370 kilometres per hour to between 165 and 205 kilometres an hour. So we're now going to consider protection against tropical storms. Protection means actions taken before a hazard strikes to reduce its impact. So let's consider what types of protection might be put in place to enable the effects of tropical storms to be reduced. So how can buildings be protected from tropical storms? Remember that tropical storms produce strong winds, heavy rainfall and storm surges. So buildings must be able to withstand those hazards that are produced by tropical storms. So how can buildings be modified before a tropical storm event to reduce the chance of deaths and damage, so to reduce the effects? Well, let's consider some of those different strategies. And you can see on the screen there are 2 tropical storm buildings that have been designed and put in place in 2 different areas of the world. So the top image is from Florida and the bottom image is a cyclone shelter in Bangladesh. And you'll notice that some of the strategies we're going to talk about now are evident in these images. So the first thing we might be able to do to buildings to secure and protect them is to secure tiles to the roofs or have no tiles at all. So you'll notice that on both of those images, neither of those buildings have got any roof tiles. This is because roof tiles, if they become loose in a tropical storm, can cause death and damage. In addition, you might add storm shutters to all windows on our buildings, and that is to prevent the glass from shattering and causing death and damage. We may secure garden furniture because the strong winds may entrain that garden furniture, which again can cause damage to other buildings and injuries and maybe even deaths. We also might want to remove trees from nearby as well because they can also become uprooted by the strong tropical storm winds. So by removing the trees, we reduce the risk to buildings and people. We also might want to install emergency generators to our buildings because electricity lines may become loose or damaged during a tropical storm. So if you have an emergency generator, this allows people to still have access to the electricity they may need. You could also build your home on stilts or build your businesses on stilts. And as you can see from the images, both of these buildings are actually raised from the ground. And this is to reduce the risk of flooding due to either rivers flooding because of the excessive rainfall or due to storm surges. We might also remove gravel from driveways as well and maybe replace it with concrete or tarmac. Because if you remove the gravel, it reduces the risk of the particles from the gravel actually being entrained and damaging buildings or even causing injury to people. And lastly, we might reinforce the doors on our buildings. This includes garage doors as well. They're often a weaker area of a building. So if you combine these different strategies together, you're more likely to create buildings that can withstand the tropical storm and therefore reduce the effects. There are other protection techniques that can be put in place to reduce the effects of tropical storms. These techniques can be put in place before a tropical storm event in order to prepare for the hazard in advance. So for example, mangrove trees that you see in the image here can be planted at the coastline to reduce the wave energy that is created during a storm surge. They also accumulate mud, creating a natural barrier. This reduces the effects of a storm surge and therefore will protect people and protect belongings and reduce deaths and damage. Another technique that we could use is to build sea walls. So these are concrete structures that can be built at the coastline, and they reduce the chance of coastal flooding caused by storm surges, thereby reducing deaths and damage and other effects. However, seawalls are incredibly expensive, so that might be something that different countries have to take into consideration. So in order to think about how buildings can be protected from tropical storm events in advance of the natural hazard, we're going to think about a little activity to consolidate that knowledge. So in this activity, I would like you to design your own tropical storm-proof house. Just a little sketch is absolutely fine. So I would like you to sketch and annotate a house which has been designed to withstand a tropical storm event. And when I say annotation, what I mean by that is more than just a label. So you have to be able to develop the point to explain why it is that you've chosen certain features. So on the right-hand side, you will see the list of ways that buildings could be modified in order to be more tropical storm proof. So I would like you to try and include as many of these different features in your design as possible. So you need to create your sketch and then annotate onto your sketch what you've included and why you've included it. So that's the bit that's really important. So I would like you to explain how each feature helps to reduce the effects of a tropical storm. So if your building doesn't have any tiles on it, why not? If your building is on stilts, why would that be really useful? So you have to justify why it is that you've included the different features within your design. I'd like you to try and include at least 4 ideas. Please don't worry about the drawing or the sketch itself. Just try your best. And when you sketch, you can use your pen, that's no problem. But if you want to collect a pencil, that is also really useful. So please pause the video and I'd like you to design your little house. Make sure you've added on your annotations, and then I would like you to resume the video when you are finished so we can mark your work and see how you've gotten on. So it's now time to mark your work. So make sure that you have a different coloured pen in order for you to be able to do this. So I would like you to make sure that you tick your work if you've included some of the ideas that I've included in my model, but also you may want to add in any corrections. So as you can see from my drawing, it doesn't matter if your drawing is not particularly sophisticated. What matters is the ideas that you've included in your annotations. So I've put some examples in here of some of the things that you might have written. So we'll start at the top. So shutters on the windows to prevent glass shattering. That's a feature that I've included in my design. However, in pink, I've then said this reduces injuries and damage. So I've justified why it is that I've included shutters on my building. Reinforced garage door to prevent strong winds removing the door. This reduces the risk of injury. So again, I've justified why I've included it. No gravel on the driveway to reduce the risk of damage and injury caused by loose particles in the strong winds. So again, I've given the example of what I've included and suggested why it would be an important feature. There are other features that I have included within my model. So garden furniture secured to the ground, trees removed from the garden, an emergency generator has been installed within the house. What I haven't done there is explained why I've included them. I've just labelled on what the features are. So if I was to improve my model, I would ensure that I extend each of those points fully to explain why they've been included in the design. So just ensure in your design that you have explained which features you've included and why it's really important to have them in a tropical storm-proof building. So let's now consider planning for tropical storms. And by planning, we mean actions taken to enable communities to respond to and recover from natural hazards. So let's think about some ways that we can plan for tropical storms. So we're going to use the example of what happens in the USA to illustrate some of the ways that people can plan for a tropical storm. So in the USA, in May of each year, they host the American National Hurricane Preparedness Week. And this allows people to focus on planning for a tropical storm event. And it's all about educating the communities about what to do if there is a tropical storm, but also to provide them with any resources that they might need to plan effectively. This helps to reduce panic, this helps to educate people about what to do, and this helps to reduce the number of deaths and also the amount of damage that tropical storms may cause. So advice is given out during this week about how people can secure their homes, which is incredibly important, as we've just been mentioning when we've done our building designs. So for example, securing garden furniture. We also have time within this week, or people have time within the week, to plan evacuation routes. So do people know how to evacuate out of an area at risk so that people don't panic if the evacuation orders are given? It is also really important for people to plan the route to the official evacuation shelters so that people know where to go if there is a natural disaster occurring. This obviously keeps people safe and reduces panic. Also, people are encouraged to buy emergency survival kits, which are really important to help keep people alive and also to provide them with the resources they need for about 72 hours on average. People are advised to ensure their cars have enough fuel because they may not have enough time to be able to fuel their cars if they need to evacuate an area. Also, it may be that they waste a lot of time if they need to fuel their car. Having that ready means that they can go to the evacuation areas more quickly and therefore they're more likely to save lives. Emergency services are also trained in this period of time and throughout the whole year so that they know exactly what to do if there is a tropical storm event. Obviously, this allows the fire service, the ambulance service, the police service to respond very, very quickly if there is a tropical storm. And again, this helps to reduce deaths and reduce damage because they are ready and they know what to do and they have the resources in place. People are also encouraged to stockpile their own emergency supplies. And this, of course, allows people to have those things to hand should they need them, which will reduce deaths and damage. So what I would like you to do now is to consider the idea of an emergency survival kit, and I would like you to design one. Now, this could be drawing the emergency survival kit with all of its parts, or it might be that you want to create a list and include on the list what would be in your survival kit and why. So I would like you to think about if you were to design a survival kit for somebody that is about to experience a tropical storm, what would need to be included and why? The survival kit should last people 72 hours, and I would like you to suggest at least 4 items that you would put into your survival kit. So when I show you my model answer, I've suggested the item and then I've explained why it was needed and how it would reduce deaths and how it would help people in this situation. But again, you may decide to sketch or draw your survival kit and you may add annotations to explain why you've included certain features. So please pause the video to complete your task and resume when you are ready to mark your work. So it's now time to mark your work. What's really important is that you've justified why it is that you would have included the items that you've selected. So just make sure that you've fully explained why it is you would include the items in your emergency kit. So I'm going to share with you the 4 items that I would put in my emergency survival kit, and it might be that you have got similar ideas to me. You can use a different colour pen to add any additional notes to your work if you think that would be useful. So the first item that I would put in my emergency survival kit would be a first aid kit. This would be included to assist with any injuries caused by the tropical storm. This could reduce infections and the risk of more serious health implications, reducing the overall risk of death. So I've justified why that would be a useful item. The second item I would include would be fresh water. This would be included because water supplies may have been cut off or contaminated by the storm. Fresh water is needed for survival. My third item would be non-perishable foods. This would be needed as people may be forced to evacuate their homes. Food is needed for survival. And the last item that I would include in my emergency survival kit would be a whistle. This would be needed in case a person becomes trapped by tropical storm debris. This increases their chance of rescue and reduces their chance of death. So as you can see, I have fully explained why each of these items would be very, very useful to have in my emergency survival kit and how it could help to reduce the impact or the effect of tropical storm risks. So we're now going to apply our knowledge to a question and think about how we might answer a 6-mark question. So the question that you're going to have a go at answering is this. Explain how the effects of tropical storms can be reduced. 6 marks. Now, we've talked about 4 different methods or ways that effects of tropical storms can be reduced. So we've looked at monitoring, we've looked at prediction, we've looked at protection, and we've looked at planning. So we're going to take 2 of these areas to add into our work and add into our answer. So the success criteria for this is going to be to describe and explain 2 strategies, 2 ways that the effects of tropical storms can be reduced. But what you must do is develop your explanation to explain fully how the risk of death and or damage is actually reduced. So the 2 that I've selected that I'm going to put into my answer is around prediction and how that can support evacuation, and also planning and how that can encourage the emergency services to be prepared and be ready in case there is a tropical storm event. But you can choose any 2 strategies that you would like to from what we've covered today. The key is, can you describe the strategy and can you then explain how it is useful in reducing the effects of tropical storms? Try and explain your point in a very well-rounded way so it is fully developed. So please pause the video at this point to complete this activity, and then when you're ready to mark your work, you can resume the video and then we can have a look at an example answer and you can mark your answer too. So we're now ready to mark our work. So what you see on the screen is an example of an answer, and what I would like you to do is to make sure that you have described and explained 2 different strategies in detail. So what I'm going to show you here is an example of how that can be done. So make sure you use a different colour pen, and it might be that you've got similar answers to my 2 paragraphs here, and it means that you can tick your work and give yourself a mark, but it might be that you've got some different strategies, and that is absolutely fine as long as you've explained them thoroughly. So prediction can help to reduce the effects of tropical storms. Satellites can help to predict the path of tropical storms, 1 mark, which can be used to determine which areas could be evacuated, 1 mark. Evacuation reduces the chance of death because people are moved away from the area at risk before the tropical storm arrives, 1 mark. So I've clearly described the strategy and then I've been really clear in how it is that evacuation actually reduces the chance of death. My second paragraph. Planning can help to reduce the effects of tropical storms. For example, if emergency services have been trained to deal with a tropical storm, 1 mark, and they have a stockpile of medical supplies, they can respond to trapped and injured people quickly, 1 mark. This will reduce the death toll, 1 mark. So again, I've fully developed my point, made sure it's really clearly explained, and therefore I've been able to give myself 6 out of 6 marks for this answer. So how did you get on? So that brings us to the end of our lesson today about how the effects of tropical storms could be reduced. Remember, we can't stop a tropical storm, but we do have some methods or strategies or techniques to help us to manage and deal with tropical storms. Some of those things are before the event takes place, and some of those things will continue after the event takes place. So please make sure you complete your exit quiz to ensure that you've understood everything from today. And it might be a really good idea to summarise 3 key ideas that you could take away from the lesson so that you can secure your learning. Thank you very much for joining me for the lesson and well done on all your hard work. Take care.